Hi there, bloggers creating courses listeners. I'm Shannon Russell, host of the Second Act Success podcast, where I share inspirational conversations with women who have changed careers or started living a new second act. My hope is that these stories will motivate you to make a change towards a happier life. You can listen to the Second Act Success podcast anywhere you enjoy your podcast, or go to secondactsuccess.co/podcast. Now it's time to introduce you to the inspirational host of the Bloggers Creating Courses podcast, Verity Sangan.
When you're working your online business and creating an online course, the overwhelm of the work you need to do is real. You might often find your to-do list feeling like a mountain you need to climb, and that you need more than one of you to get everything done. But is having a clone of yourself ever really that useful in business? Today, I'm joined by the wonderful Skye Barbour to discuss why having the mindset of wanting to clone yourself to get more done actually might be hampering your progress. Skye Barbour is a leadership coach, best-selling author, business podcaster, farmer's wife, and mummy to 2 boys. Since 2018, she has been on a mission to evolve female leaders, helping them align and leverage their time, team, and talent. After working in corporate management for 15 years and hitting burnout, she ended up in hospital. 5 months pregnant with no turning back, she took the plunge and quit, starting up Skye Barbour Limited. Since then, she has helped hundreds of ambitious women scale their businesses while leading a life they love. Let's dive in. Welcome to Bloggers Creating Courses, the podcast which will take you behind the scenes of creating an online course. I'm your host, Verity Sangan, founder and education consultant at veritysongon.com. I'm so excited to help you create an online course that you are proud of and to be part of your journey to scale your business as an online course creator. Let's get into the episode. Skye, I am so excited to welcome you to the podcast today. We have got so much that we're going to talk about, but first of all, I'm going to hand over to you. Tell us all about you, tell us what it is you do, tell us your story, introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you so much for having me, Verity. It's lovely to be here with you. Today, I'm going to start my story by telling you I'm having one of those moments today whereby I sit here with a multi-6-figure business, a team of 4 other women who their only source of income is through my business, 2 small children under 5, about to take my whole family, extended family, 12 of us on a trip I've been planning for ages, and achieved some pretty major milestones in my business. And yet this morning I went back to a store where I was my last job. So 5 years ago, I left the John Lewis partnership and I was a branch manager for Waitrose. And I just went back and shopped in my shop and where I was. And I just walked around and I thought, wow, this has been a transformational 5 years. That feels like such a long time ago. And I'm so grateful. I said to my husband when I got back, I was like, I am so grateful I have made every step that I have, even when it's been hard, even when I have doubted myself, even when I've had moments of like, oh my goodness, is the money going to come in? Or, all the challenges that we go through, because it's not a smooth process. I do not regret any moment of it. So I sit here feeling very grateful this morning, having had that kind of reflection come up for me today. But when I look back as to why I started my business, I look to my parents, and I had a very privileged and fortunate upbringing and a great childhood. But my dad was a very busy farmer. Both my parents were entrepreneurs, and my mum had her own retail business. And when my third sibling came along, there's 4 of us in total, of which I'm the oldest, my mum gave up her business to be a stay-at-home mum. And my dad, we didn't really see because he was always working. So he sacrificed time with us in order to support us financially. And my mum sacrificed her dream. And I saw the pressure it put on their marriage. I saw the pressure it put on their relationship, financial pressure. And whilst I, love and respect my parents, I didn't want to have a life like that. I wanted to be able to be a great mummy and earn great money. I didn't want it to be either or. So I always knew it was going to be in my own business, but I was actively encouraged to go and get a job. So I did 9 years. I got headhunted and fast-tracked through university, through the graduate program. And at the age of 27, I was one of the youngest branch managers for Waitrose, had a 45 million pound business I was looking after, 250 members of staff. And, it was brilliant. On the whole, I loved it. But most fortunately, I learnt all the practical skills it needed, all the structures, all the systems, all the operational, all the team management, all the leadership skills in order to grow a 8-figure business. What I didn't realize in starting my own business, that knowing the practical skills only gives you so much. And I spent the first few years, and still do now, working on myself, my inner CEO, to be able to get out of that cycle of sacrifice, which I could easily be in that pattern, and grow a scalable, successful business, working on the whole around a life that I want to have. So that has been my mission, and I am on a goal. My whole goal is about breaking this cycle of sacrifice that so many of us are in, and blending kind of the masculine and feminine of leadership so that we can be great mummies and earn great money.
That is such a lovely story, which I think a lot of our audience can connect with. And there's something that I want to pick up on that you said in your story there, was how when you were working that previous role, you were learning all of the different parts which have made you become you, or helped you become you, for when you became CEO of your own business. Yeah. And I think that's really important to pick up on, because I think so often people will say, oh, but I had this previous job. It had nothing to do with where I'm at now. And I'm a big believer that it doesn't matter where you've been, you can always bring something. Is it the communication? Is it the people skills? Is it the management skills? Whatever it is, you can always bring something to your present situation. So I think it's really interesting that that was one of the first things that you said, because I'm sure a lot of people would say, well, where's the link between working in John Lewis and what you're doing now? And as you said, there's actually a huge link between the management, the leadership skills, the people skills there. Yeah. So
I just want to build on that, actually, because lots of people tell me, the link seems obvious because I sort of teach what I did before, but that took me a while to get to. When I actually started my own business, I taught public speaking. I taught communication skills, because that's how I fast-tracked my career, was being a great communicator. And it was because I didn't own and recognize my talents, my unique gifts, and the experience I had. I didn't perceive that to be valuable enough. It wasn't until I saw all the entrepreneurs, friends, family, colleagues around me struggling at the same stuff like my dad did, that I realized, hang on a minute, I know how to solve this. I'm going to help them do it. But there was this real thing for me when I came in the online world of working with people who were further on in the journey than me. And I felt massive imposter syndrome about that. So I would work with multi-6-figure, 7-figure business people. Once I kind of got out of my public speaking kind of thing and realized actually it's about people, it's about team. And I saw a gap whereby lots of people in the online world just hire freelancers. And I was like, why is no one building a solid in-house team to truly be able to scale to that multi-7-figure point? So I was working with business owners who were way more successful than me. Like, I had turnover like £30,000. I was working with people who turn over $300,000 a month. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but I was like, who am I? But I didn't recognize that I had all these skills and experience that they didn't have. I had all this knowledge where they had blind spots. And I wasn't appreciating that enough. But it did take quite a lot for me to like get over that kind of the critical block, as I call it, to be able to work with people in that way. And so often I think I see people go, oh yeah, but I did this in my career, it's different online. I'm like, really? It's not. It's exactly the same world. We can just communicate to a lot more people a lot more easily.
Yes, I love that so much. So then that leads me on really nicely to our next question. Tell us, what is it that your business does in its all-encompassing way? I know you've touched on a few things there, but tell us, what is it that your business now does today in 2022?
So I help multi-6, 7-figure business owners scale their business to that level without sacrificing their time. And what that looks like is a real mixture of internal leadership behaviors and beliefs, as well as the practical elements of the right support, the right systems, the right structure. But it's about connecting with the person's internal leadership, seeing their blocks and how that affects their like team dynamics and relationships with people around them. And how do I free them up so they get out of that cycle of sacrifice and are able to scale? So it's very much, I'm known for the practical stuff, but it's very much about, when you speak to any of my clients, the biggest thing is how they perceive and act as a leader of their business, having worked with me.
I love that so much. That just speaks such volumes to me, and I'm sure it speaks such volumes to all of our listeners as well. And I know that one of the kind of phrases that I want to say that you coined the phrase, but you use the phrase in your own podcast and in your own work there of full freedom. So what I want to ask you is, what does full freedom mean to you?
Yeah. So full freedom is a term I coined because we talked about freedom a lot. I'm like, well, what is freedom? And the thing I love about freedom is that it's different for every single one. And the way I look at things is like, there is no judgment. What is one person's freedom of like flying around the world and sitting on various beaches, doing work from a beach? Like, that's my idea of hell. Not, occasionally is nice, but not the whole time. Like, my idea of freedom is being able to go out in my dress and wellies, although it's too hot right now, and to go and like take my son for a ride on his pony and a dog walk in the middle of the day and be there and do all the things that feel important to me. So the idea of full freedom is that you have got time, you've got financial freedom, you've got freedom to choose what you do or don't do in your day, in your life, in your business, in your role, and like creative freedom. And you've got clarity, like you've got the freedom like to know exactly what you want and how you're going to get there. And that, I don't know, when you've been plagued with self-doubt, and I'm a Libra, so I overanalyze and overweigh everything. When you got clarity, there's something really freeing about that. So it's a combination of time, money, choice, and clarity, which when you have that, I believe you've got a life on your terms, which I'd call full freedom.
Totally. And I love what you said as well about how freedom means something different to everybody, because you touched on being a Libra. I'm a Virgo, and we are known to be overanalyzers. We have lists for everything. We really, really just go into too much detail sometimes and worry about all those different decisions. So freedom for me is not having to worry constantly. As you said, freedom for somebody else might be scaling to 6-7 figures. Freedom to somebody else might be sitting on a beach, which, by the way, I would completely be there if that was my lifestyle, because I'd be all over that. But it's important to recognize that full freedom does mean different things to different people, which I think is such an important message that you're delivering there.
And I want to give an example. So I had a client come to me who was working 90 to 100-hour weeks.
Wow.
And she's like, Skye, I just want to do, and she was turning over 25,000 a month in the online space. And she's like, I just want to keep the money the same, but I want to work half the number of hours. Well, within 6 months of us working together, she's got to 40-hour weeks and earning £10,000 a month more than what she was working before.
Brilliant.
And it can make a real difference. Whereas I have other clients who come to me who are working 20-hour weeks and they're like, Skye, I want to work 6 hours a week. No joke. And I'm like, that's completely your choice. There's no judgment here about what's right or wrong. It's just got to be right or wrong for you.
Yeah.
So it's up to you to decide.
And I guess there's that idea of being realistic as well, because thinking about the online course market as well, I think a lot of people get caught up in this idea that when you create an online course, you are only working a few hours a week then, because you're maybe just checking your stats or whatever and watching the money roll in, when actually, and I know that we agree on this point, personally, I don't think, controversially, there's such a thing as passive income or true passive income when it comes to online courses, because there's always going to be the updating, the marketing, the social media posts, the whatever it is that you need to do. You can't just, in my opinion, create a course and shove it out there, because how are people going to come to it? Online courses, it doesn't work with that phrase of, build it and they will come, because nobody knows that you're there unless you're doing the marketing. And yes, you might only want to do 6 hours a week on that, brilliant. But then you need to be realistic with your expectations as to what you're going to achieve in however many hours a week you devote to
Absolutely.
that.
I think it also depends what you define as work and what you define, like what sits within your talent zone. So some of my clients are like amazing content creations. The idea of writing, telling stories, doing posts, like that's just fun for them. So they do like 3 posts of like that every single day. That is my idea of hell and very much work. So I think it can be like, I completely agree with you. It's not just a case of like you might make the odd sale, I do, and I don't market something, but it's not going to give you the stability. It is about numbers. It is about audience growth. Now, if going live and being in communities and having conversations is like fun for you and you really want to do that 2 hours a day, it may not feel like work. But it's still doing income generating tasks towards building your business. So I think there's a degree of how does the business structure that you have play to your strengths and enjoyment, and what are you wanting, like what are you prepared to do, what would you like to do? So whilst I completely agree that we have to put effort in to set these things up, to change things, to market them, etc., having just gone back to Waitrose today, I think to myself, even if I'm still today, I was my full day on a Thursday, I'm doing 8 hours of calls. I'd rather be doing 8 hours of calls with fun things like podcast interviews than I would be dealing with that job I used to have. So, in comparison, it is work, but it is so much more fun. So I think it can be however you want it to be, but I totally get that and agree with, it isn't just a case of like, I've made this course and now it's flying off the shelf. Like that's more luck than anything else.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And I'm not sure I'm the biggest believer in luck when it comes to selling online products either.
You make your own luck.
Yes, I completely agree with you, which I think then leads on really nicely to my next question. We've talked about full freedom, this lovely phrase which you've coined there. But I know that you also talk about the 4 blocks of freedom, or the 4 freedom blocks. Can you tell us a little bit more about those?
Yeah. So a little bit what I was saying at the start, what I've recognized is there is this, and honestly, it's from having to overcome this myself. So I said to you that I'd learn all the stuff. Like, I mean, I was in one of the best management and leadership programs, I would argue, in the country. So when it came to starting my own business, you'd think it'd be easy, wouldn't you? Why did I make a mistake with when I fired my first VA? I was like, how am I making these mistakes? All sorts of imposter conversations came up in my head. That's when I realized, no, Skye, you can know the practical stuff, but unless you work on my internal leadership behaviors, my leadership beliefs, I am never going to be able to implement this stuff. I'm always going to be the one stuck in the doing. So I go back to this like idea of cycle of sacrifice. And there are these 4 main profiles that come up, these 4 main blocks. And when you're under pressure, if you are someone who is a big-hearted, caring individual who cares about people, I want you to listen to these 4 things and think like, oh, that's me. And you may recognize more than one. That's okay. But there will be one that's a preference. So the first one is the responsibility block. So that is the belief. You'll say yes to everything, by the way. And this is a belief that like, you should be responsible for everything. And it might mean, you might be listening to Verity about doing online courses, or I'm thinking, oh, that's all right for X, Y, and Z, but I need to be part of the solution. It has to come through me. Or you're in a done for you service, you're in a one-to-one service. It's very difficult to break out of that. Or you believe that your process is your accountability, the way you do something rather than your method. And it can become very hard to scale beyond you when you take so much responsibility. Boundaries get blurred, payments get delayed. You say yes. And this can affect home and business. So that's the responsibility block. The second one is the critical block. So that is that driving negative voice that says, that's not good enough. That's not ready yet. You can't share that offer because you don't have blah, blah, blah sorted yet. Or you can't possibly delegate that task. You don't know how to do it well enough yourself. Like you can't delegate something that you're not prepared to do or don't want to do or not good enough yet. So it's this real like devil on your shoulder criticizing everything you do. And so you stay small, stuck in the doing, losing confidence, but wanting control. Then the third one is the independence block. So this is the belief that you should be able to do all the things. You're not asking for home help because you should be able to run your business and look after the children and keep a nice tidy home and put a dinner on the table. I know I'm talking very, backwards perhaps for some of you listening to this, but in my life and being a farmer's wife, like traditionally, as in even my generation of people, like taking meals out to the people on the tractors is like a normal thing in the harvest time.
And I'm from a farming community in Jersey. So yes, I completely understand where you're coming from there.
To the pump. So if you've got the independence block, it's quite a masculine energy. It's very much about like, I will be fine. And I will, emotions you keep locked away until it's all too much, until it's too late. And that's why you might hit a breaking point and burn out. You might hit a breaking point and have an emotional outburst or a fuse, go, because you have kept it all protecting others. You've kept it all locked up inside because you believe you should be able to do things solo. And then the last one is the busy block. So you may have Verity have this when, and this is an example I use when I'm like stirring dinner with one hand, bouncing a baby with my foot on the baby bouncer. I'm typing to a reply to an email and I'm listening to a podcast and I'm thinking I am so efficient. I'm doing all of these things and yet I'm doing nothing effectively. And so that busy block is like, you put things on your list, you work 100 miles an hour, you're that whirlwind of energy until it's gone and then you are exhausted. You're impossible to keep up with and you're very difficult to get things from, as in to delegate from, because no one can keep up. And you always think you need to be the one responsible. So you stay small. This freedom block comes up and like smacks you in the face and says, no, you can't possibly get help. You can't possibly bring out a new offer. You can't possibly take on more clients. You can't cope as it is. You're already doing too much. And then, of course, guilt and shame and everything plagues you. And so you stay small. Or what's worse, sometimes give up. And so what my whole process is about, my full freedom framework, is all about, is to enable you to work on that internal leadership mindset, balancing the masculine and feminine, whilst we put the practical things in place so you don't have to do all the doing anymore. And sometimes that's home help and sometimes that's business help and sometimes that's just systemizing. But those freedom blocks do come up for people. So I would really encourage you to think about which one resonates with you because there's always a way through it.
Definitely. And as somebody who is currently recording a podcast and is bouncing the baby with one arm and thinking, oh my gosh, I do need to tidy the house later. I know 100% which block I am currently resonating with. But we know that when we're working in our own businesses, they can be challenging. Whatever it is that our online business is about, if we're full-time course creators, if we're coaches, if we're mentors, whatever it is, we know that our own online businesses can be challenging. And when, we're creating curriculums, we're doing our marketing, designing graphics, literally, we seem to be doing everything, don't we, as solopreneurs? So I know that in a couple of episodes of your own podcast, and we'll mention your podcast and I'll link it down in the show notes later if anyone wants to listen to Skye's podcast, because if you are an entrepreneur, I would highly recommend the podcast. It's called Full Freedom for Entrepreneurs, but like I said, I'll link it in the show notes. But in a few episodes of your podcast, you touched on the fact that sometimes you might be tempted to think particularly if you're in that busy block, you need to create a clone of yourself. And I'm sure I think this on a daily basis. And I'm sure that there are loads and loads of our listeners who are thinking, yes, I need a clone of myself to get through my massive task list. But I know that you've mentioned on a couple of episodes that actually a clone of yourself isn't an ideal thought process. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. It's one of the things people always ask me, like, I just need another me. If there was another me, oh my gosh, there's endless opportunities, but I just need another version of me. And, I get it from human to human, I understand that, because isn't it just so much easier to have someone who's on your brain way of thinking and knows how to do things the way you know how to do things and your preferences and your likes and have the same kind of values and all of that stuff and talents. Great. But we as individuals are not brilliant at everything. And our view of the world is not the only view of the world. And so by focusing and wanting someone who sees things directly like we do and does things exactly like we do, we're actually missing a huge opportunity to get someone with different talents a different view, a different background, a different understanding and take of things to be able to develop the business further and develop your thinking further and push and challenge you in a kind, loving way to expand and grow that someone who is just like you isn't going to do. So when we want the speed, because normally it's to do with I'm desperate, I need help, I need another version of me. Actually, what we're doing is the medium to long term is damaging our business and brand, because we're just bringing in another version of ourselves and we're not allowing ourselves the opportunity to have diversity of thought, a diversity of talent, diversity of backgrounds within our business. And so, and if you've got two people who love doing the same stuff and are brilliant at the same stuff, then you all want to do the same things, and no one wants to do the accounting, the bookkeeping, the I don't know, the home help stuff. That actually, if you find someone who that is their talent zone, they will lap up admin all day long and love it and be brilliant at it and be more effective at it, which if you do it and your clone does it, that won't be the case. So it's all about creating like a diverse team of talent within the business with which you can pull upon.
Definitely. And I'll use an example from myself, from my own business, is I am well known that I do not like Pinterest. I love Pinterest for scrolling through it and creating my ideal kitchen and, you know, my ideal party and choosing cakes and, you know, that kind of thing. That I love doing that. But I suck at Pinterest for scheduling my own pins. And I go through these phases of 1 week, I'm like, yeah, I'm really owning this on Pinterest, and then nothing for months on end. And, you know, I got into this mindset of I need another me so that me can concentrate on Pinterest. But as you said, I don't need another me because me is terrible at Pinterest marketing. So to hire another me would just have another, you know, miserable person who doesn't like Pinterest. So I've gone down the route of I am actively looking and hiring a Pinterest VA, because why not outsource that task, which I'm not very good at all. I'm not very good at it because I don't really like it. So why not hire that out to somebody who they live for Pinterest and they live for designing pins and they know how to get the captions right. They know how to, you know, do all the things that I need to get from Pinterest to help make that part of the business successful. So instead of wanting to clone yourself, how would you recommend to our audience that they start thinking about going down a route of outsourcing aspects of their online business?
Okay. So on a practical level, what we need to do here is recognize what is taking up your time that is low value to you. So if you think about like a ladder, you've got the high value tasks at the top and low value tasks at the bottom. What we need to do is get the business owner, the solopreneur, up the ladder, doing more of the stuff that's probably income generating or client delivery or creation of content or marketing. So as time goes on, we need to recognize what is low value in our business. And that can be things that we don't like, that take up too much time, that don't generate the income that we would like. And we need to then start seeing like, right, how much time do I need to allocate to someone else? And how do I go like creating a role for this person? What do we want them to do? So there's a very practical thing of just being able to analyze your time. What is taking up time? Where are you spending it on things that you shouldn't be doing? What can you share to someone else? And before you're ready, start creating like a dream job description, a dream hire of someone who, when you can or want to step into that, you can just put it out there and you can be able to attract and find the right person. Now, of course, that is just one step. Then how do we then go about like finding, building trust, allowing control? That is all where that kind of internal leadership development is required. So it's about understanding which block will come up and what will keep you stuck in the doing, and then being able to dive into, well, kind of what is my blind spot here? What is it about the responsibility block? Like how might that show itself when it comes to hiring? And I would really encourage you, I have a free quiz, which Verity kindly said I could share it in the notes, but take that quiz, see what that's going to be like, and understand how hiring a first VA could be a real challenge. And then I would be making sure that you've got the practical things in place, like the job description, to make it easy so you can be proactive. So it's kind of both internal and personal work. It's difficult for me to explain like the personal stuff because obviously quite a lot of it is bespoke and very much individual work. But even that awareness can be a first step.
Absolutely. And it's thinking, like you said, what is it that isn't, what are those tasks that aren't bringing you value at that particular point, or that you're not particularly enjoying, that you can then look at building somebody else's job description. I think that's a really valuable piece of information, because so often, I'm sure you're the same, you go into Facebook groups or whatever and you see people saying, I need a VA. Okay,
Yeah.
but what do you need that VA to do? Because a VA who's going to deal with your emails and take your bookings is very different to a VA who's going to schedule all your social media, for example.
Yeah.
They're going to have different talents. So just pitching up on Facebook and saying, I need a VA, or going
it's only going to end in disaster, I can tell you that much.
Exactly. You're not going to, and the same as going on to Fiverr or, any of those kind of websites and just typing in something very vague. But as you said, if you've created that job description, you already know what you're looking for. You know that if someone then says, yeah, I'm a VA and I specialize in X, Y, and Z, you can be like, that's great, but I actually need somebody who specializes in A, B, and C, because those are the tasks that I'm going to outsource.
It's like if you had heart failure, you wouldn't go to your GP and say, like, can you do an operation on my heart? No, you want a heart specialist, and you want the best heart specialist in the country. So it's the same thing, like saying like virtual assistants, grouping them together. It's just like saying GPs. But actually, if you've got a specific problem or a specific challenge or a specific area that you don't want to do, like go and find a specific specialist, and that can still be a virtual assistant, but with a talent in and passion for that area.
Absolutely. I think that is so, so important. I was talking to somebody about business coaches last night, because I've just got myself a business coach who's lovely, bless her. But I've also got a friend who's a business coach. And somebody said to me recently, they said, well, why did you not go to your friend? I'm like, because she specializes in a very set type of business and she's very successful with that. But even she said that she wouldn't be very good for me because she doesn't specialize in the kind of business that I'm in. So it's that same kind of idea that you can't just lump people all together just because they've got, a job title. I think that's really, really, really important. And as I said, it goes back to that idea of creating that job description and really being specific with yourself as to what types of tasks you want somebody to help plug that gap there.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to do before we wrap up is go back to some of the points that we were making about finding full freedom and these 4 freedom blocks. And what I would like to ask you now is, for our listeners out there, what can they do today to help lead their lives in a more freeing way? I realise that's a huge question, but I'm interested to that one.
That is a big question. I'm thinking, wait, wow, where do we start with that one? So I think that 2 small practical things you can do to start living a life of full freedom today. One of them is about being aware, where are you spending your time? And is this through choice, or is this like being done to you, or are you able to choose? And I'm not talking about like, what does your calendar say? I'm talking about where you actually spending your time. Now, I'm as guilty as the next of watching Home and Away at lunchtime for half an hour. And that's a choice. And there's no problem in that if that's how I want to spend my time. But I'm also a person who goes down the rabbit hole of reels on Instagram and thinks it's going to be 5 minutes and it's 50 minutes. Is that a good use of my time? No. So once you've started being aware of your time, I'd ask yourself the triple S question. What do I need to stop doing? What do I need to streamline, i.e. spend half the time doing? And what do I need to share? And that can form a part of this job description. The next thing I would do, once I've got some awareness of this time, like, and obviously you can go down like the job description route, etc. But I would look at things in my life and think, right, what little things can I do to lead a life more full freedom? Like, so when we think about our dreams, ambition, I don't know about you, but mine are huge, massive goals of like millions of pounds and feel at times quite unobtainable or safe in the fact that they are that much in the future. What we do now is make sure we look at like the little things in our life that we think, well, how can we upgrade? And it's sometimes so easy. Like, for example, my husband said to me yesterday, no longer are we going to buy this type of tomato. I only want like the best vine ripened tomatoes, whatever. And he's like, that's just an investment. I know they cost twice the price, but it's just an investment I want to make. I'm like, yes, it is about making, so we always have like, we now have our own chickens, but before, like the best eggs. And doesn't mean we buy everything top of the range in our fridge, but certain things that are important to us, we have like improved and upgraded in our lives just to see how little things, little pleasures that don't cost the earth, like using that bubble bath that you have been thinking about using for 5 years and never used, actually using it and enjoying it, taking that half an hour for yourself at lunchtime to go for that walk and not feel guilty about things you should be doing, deciding that you're going to spend 10 minutes every day journaling, whatever it might be. Like, what can you decide today that is going to give you the feeling, a sense, a small step of recharging your own battery and living a more freeing life?
I love that so much. It's about the small actionable things that you can do rather than the massive changes, which are going to take you longer. And those smaller steps are going to lead to those massive changes further down the road without being completely overwhelming. Well, Skye, we have covered so much in this episode. It has been fantastic speaking to you. So thank you so much. But before you go, please tell our listeners, how can they find out more about you, your services, and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, thank you. I've really enjoyed being here, and I would love to connect with people. My DMs, I read every single one. I'm on Facebook, Skye Barbour, or Instagram, Skye Barbour. Come and find me, see my stupid reels. I mean, brilliant reels. I show a bit of personality there. And I have my podcast, which you've kindly said. But the best thing to do is come and do this quiz, skyebarbour.com/quiz. It gives you some insights, further insights into those blocks. And if it resonates and you want to see how I can help you further, send me a message or email.
That's perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Pleasure.
As I said, it's been an amazing, amazing episode. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Bloggers Creating Courses. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, leave a rating and a review. Ratings and reviews help us to reach more people who want to build and scale their online course. So you're really helping to widen the support for our blogging community. To catch all of the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram @VeritySongon. I'll see you next time. Happy content creating.